I still remember the way the ground trembled that morning. Maybe it was my hands shaking. Maybe it was something deeper, something that had been tugging at me for years. All I know is this. If I'd known what my grandson was about to find under that barn floor, I would have locked the doors, burned the plans, and prayed he never looked my way again. But life doesn't work like that. Secrets have their own clocks, and that morning, mine finally ran out. I woke up before sunrise, as I always did. Habit, I guess. Farming teaches you to live by the sun, but age teaches you to wake long before it. I walked out onto the porch with my old mug of coffee, the kind that tastes more like burnt hope than anything else, and watched the sky turn from blue to bruised purple. Everything felt too still, too expectant, like the world was holding its breath. And that's when I saw him. Ethan, my grandson, 13 years old, tall for his age, despite those skinny arms that looked like they could snap in a strong wind. He was walking toward the barn, my barn, with that determined look in his eyes I dreaded. He had that look ever since he started staying with me after my daughter's messy divorce. A hurt kid searching for answers in places that weren't built for him. "Morning, Grandpa," he called, not even glancing my way. "Boy," I muttered, stepping off the porch. "Sun ain't even up yet. What are you doing poking around so early?" He just shrugged like it was nothing. Couldn't sleep. I knew that feeling. I'd been carrying it for decades. He pushed the barn door open, and the old hinges creaked their familiar warning. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I'd spent half my life keeping that barn organized in a very specific way. Not because of the tools or the hay or the old tractor that coughed more than it ran, but because of what lay under all of it. "Ethan," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "Breakfast ain't gonna cook itself." "I'll grab it later," he shouted back. "I just want to look around." He'd been doing that a lot lately, looking around, asking questions, watching me, like he'd finally figured out I wasn't just some old man with a bad back and a stubborn cattle dog. Kids are smart. They sense when something doesn't match the story they've been told. Inside the barn, dust floated in the sunlight like tiny ghosts. The air smelled of old wood and hay bales that had seen too many winters. I watched Ethan walk straight toward the far corner, the place I'd prayed he'd ignore. You see, there was a loose board there, a hairline crack. You'd never notice it unless you were looking for it. And Ethan, he was looking for everything. He crouched down, brushing the straw aside with his hands. My heart started pounding like it wanted out of my chest. "Grandpa," he murmured, "what's this?" I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just an old floorboard. Leave it be." He didn't. Kids never do when you tell them to. He pulled harder at the corner of the board, and for the first time in 20 years, I heard the sound I'd feared most. The slow, dry groan of old wood lifting. My breath caught as a sliver of darkness appeared beneath it. Not just shadow, a hole, a passage. I stepped forward quickly. "Ethan, that's enough." But he didn't back away. Instead, he looked up at me. Really looked, like he was trying to search my face for answers I wasn't ready to give. "Grandpa, what is this place?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat felt tight, my skin prickling with a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Memories I'd buried deep began clawing their way back. Flashlights, cold nights, whispered voices, the hum of machines that weren't supposed to exist out here. Ethan's fingers traced the edge of the opening. A draft of cool, stale air wafted up from below, and then he said the words that hit harder than any storm ever had. "Were you hiding something down there?" My hands trembled. I clasped them behind my back so he wouldn't see. "Ethan," I whispered, "some parts of a man's life ain't meant for kids." He held my gaze, steady and brave, in a way I'd never seen before. "I'm not a kid anymore." Funny thing, hearing him say that hurt more than the secret itself. Before I could stop him, he widened the crack just enough to reveal the first iron step, rusted but solid, leading into darkness. Ethan gasped softly. "There's a staircase." Why would a barn have a staircase? Because it wasn't built for the barn, I thought. Because it was built for me. Suddenly the barn felt smaller, like the walls were leaning in, listening. The dust in the air seemed heavier. My heart thudded against my ribs as Ethan leaned closer, peering into the dark. And for the first time, I saw it in his eyes, that mix of fear and curiosity his mother used to have, the same combination that once dragged me into a life I'd spent decades trying to forget. He whispered, "Grandpa, what's down there?" The truth pressed against my teeth, begging to escape, but all I managed to say was, "Something I hoped you'd never find." And then, before either of us could react, the faintest sound drifted up from the darkness below, a soft metallic clink. Familiar, unmistakable. Ethan's eyes widened. "There's someone down there." My blood ran cold, because I'd locked that place. I'd sealed it myself. And no one, not a soul, was ever supposed to be inside. I didn't breathe for a moment, neither did Ethan. It felt like the barn itself had frozen. Listening to that faint metallic sound drifting up from the darkness, a sound I knew far too well, a soft, deliberate clink, like metal brushing metal. Not an animal, not the wind. Someone who shouldn't have been down there. My voice rasped out, barely more than a whisper. "Step back, Ethan." "But now." He flinched at the sharpness in my tone, but he shuffled backward, eyes wide, never looking away from that opening in the floor. I moved in front of him, blocking the view as much as I could, though my legs felt weak, unsteady, and far too old for the moment unfolding in front of us. For 20 years that room had been locked tight. 20 years since I'd walked away from the life it represented. 20 years since I'd promised myself never to hear that metallic echo again. But here it was, crawling up out of the dark like a ghost I'd buried alive. "Grandpa, you know that sound, don't you?" Ethan asked, voice trembling. I swallowed hard. "Go wait outside." "No." He said it with such stubborn certainty that it shook me. My grandson, the kid who used to hide behind me when the neighbor's dog barked, was staring down a hole into God knows what. And he wasn't flinching. Life changes kids in ways you never expect. And sometimes, it forces secrets out of men who've spent half their lives running. I knelt slowly beside the opening, my knees popping like gravel under pressure. The air from below was cold, stale, carrying a faint scent of oil and metal, nothing a farm ought to smell like. I pushed the board a little farther, until the opening was big enough to see the top few steps of the iron staircase. Rusted, worn, a thin film of dust on everything, except the railing. That part had been wiped clean. My pulse stuttered. Someone had touched it, recently. Ethan leaned closer. "Grandpa, we need to call the police." I grabbed his arm, not hard but firm enough to make him look at me. "No police." He blinked. "Why? If someone broke in..." "They didn't break in." I hesitated, fighting the truth rising in my throat like a tide. "They knew exactly where the entrance was." Ethan stared at me as if trying to figure out whether he'd misheard. "How? Only you..." "Exactly," I said. Silence crashed between us, heavy, judgmental. He took a cautious step back, and I could practically see the questions climbing his spine like cold fingers. "What is this place?" he whispered. I rubbed my palms together, a nervous habit I thought I'd outgrown. "Before I ever became a farmer, before your mother was even born. I worked with some people who did things no ordinary man should have been involved in." Ethan didn't blink. He didn't breathe. I think he was afraid that if he moved even an inch, the truth would shift away from him. "What kind of things?" he asked. "The kind that leave scars no one sees. The kind that made me walk away and disappear into the quiet life of old barns and early mornings." But he wasn't ready for that truth. Not yet. I stood up, a little too fast for my old joints, and grabbed the rope hanging by the wall. It was attached to a lantern I kept ready, not for farm work, but for this. For the moment I always feared would come. Ethan watched with wide eyes. "You're going down there?" "I don't have a choice." "I'm coming with you." "No, you're not." He lifted his chin, teenage stubbornness turning his skinny frame into something solid, immovable. "If someone's down there, you shouldn't go alone. What if you get hurt?" His voice cracked slightly. "I'm not leaving you." That hit me harder than the fear, but fear was still winning. "Ethan," I said quietly, "the things below this barn, they don't belong in your world, and once you see them, you can't ever unsee them." He didn't move, Didn't argue, just stood there, trembling but determined, the way I used to be at his age. Another metallic clink echoed up from the dark. Ethan gasped. I felt my heartbeat slam into my ribs like it wanted out. That sound? That was a tool I recognized. I hadn't heard it in 20 years, but some things burn themselves into your bones. Someone was down there, someone who knew the codes, the layout, the purpose of the room. Someone who knew me. I closed my eyes. There was only one answer that made sense. "He's back," I whispered. "Who?" Ethan breathed. I grabbed the lantern and stepped toward the opening. A man I hoped was dead. Ethan grabbed my sleeve. "Grandpa," another sound floated up. Soft, rhythmic, like tapping in a pattern, a signal. My blood turned cold, because I knew that pattern. I'd used it myself once, a long time ago when the world was darker, and I was younger and far more dangerous than Ethan ever believed. Tap, tap, pause, tap, 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 tap. Ethan tugged at me. What does that mean? I exhaled shakily. It means he knows I'm here. Who does? I finally met my grandson's frightened eyes. A man who was supposed to stay buried under the life I left behind. I lowered the lantern into the opening. The light rippled over the iron staircase, and then down into the darkness below, revealing the faint outline of something, someone, standing just beyond the glow. A silhouette, still, waiting. Ethan's breath hitched. "Grandpa," he whispered, "is he dangerous?" The figure shifted slightly and the tapping stopped. My palms went cold. "Yes," I said softly. "Very. And the worst part? He didn't come here by accident." The figure didn't move at first. He just stood there at the bottom of the staircase, half swallowed by the dark, barely touched by the trembling glow of the lantern in my hand. His stillness felt wrong, too controlled, too familiar, and the air around us turned colder, like the light itself was afraid to touch him. Ethan's hand tightened around my sleeve. "Grandpa, please tell me you know who that is." I wished I could lie. I wished I could tell him it was nothing but some drifter who'd wandered where he shouldn't have. But lies crumble fast when the truth is clawing its way up the steps. I lowered the lantern a little farther, its shaky glow pooling down the staircase. That's when I saw the glint. 2 small metal pins catching the light. My stomach twisted. Those pins didn't belong on a farmer. They belonged to a part of my life I'd locked away under heavier chains than that barn floor. Ethan whispered, "Why isn't he saying anything?" "Because he's waiting for me to speak first," I murmured, and that terrified me more than anything. The tapping earlier, the way he stood, the silent anticipation. I knew exactly who it was. His name tasted bitter in my mouth. Markham. The figure shifted forward by half an inch, enough to confirm I was right, enough to make old fear drip back into my bones. Ethan's head snapped toward me. "Markham, who is—" "Someone who shouldn't be alive," I said quietly. We stared down into the shadows together. I could feel Ethan trembling beside me, but he didn't back away. Not even a step. God help him. That boy might have been scared out of his skin, but he stood his ground. The figure finally spoke. "Tom." My name echoed up the stairs, soft and deliberate, distorted slightly by the emptiness below. Ethan stiffened beside me. "He knows your name." "Of course he does. He knows a lot more than that." "Markham," I repeated, my voice rough. "You shouldn't be here." A low, breathy chuckle drifted upward. "You closed the entrance, Tom, not me." Ethan swallowed hard. "Grandpa, why is he talking like he knows you?" "Because he does. Better than most." "Kid," the voice called gently, "your grandfather and I go way back, don't we, Tom?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My pulse was pounding too hard for words to fit between the beats. Markham wasn't just someone from a past job. He wasn't an old friend or a rival or a coworker I'd fallen out with. Markham was the reason the underground room existed in the first place. He stepped closer. The lantern light kissed part of his face, just enough for me to see the sharp angle of his jaw, the streak of gray in his hair, the scar across his left cheek. A scar I'd put there. Ethan tugged my sleeve again, whispering urgently, "Grandpa, we need to get out of here, now." Markham looked up at Ethan, finally acknowledging him with a slow tilt of his head. "So that's the boy," he murmured. "He looks like her." The barn world tilted sideways for a second. He shouldn't have mentioned her. Ethan's eyebrows pinched. "Her? Who's he talking about?" I forced myself to steady my breath. "Ethan, go outside." "No," he insisted, voice trembling but stubborn. "I'm not leaving you alone with him." "Ethan, not again." His voice cracked on the last word. It hit me then. Not again. How many times had he watched people leave him? His mother drifting after the divorce, his father halfway gone long before that. Friends too wrapped up in their own lives to notice the quiet kid in the room. He wasn't going to let me be another person disappearing into darkness. Markham stepped onto the first stair. It groaned under his weight, and the lantern light caught more of him now. His hands, the way one shook slightly before he clenched it, the faint outline of something strapped to his belt. Something metal. I eased Ethan behind me. "Careful, Tom," Markham said softly. "The boy deserves to know the truth." "Not from you." A cold smile crept across his face. "Oh, I disagree. After all, you left him in the dark, just like everyone else," Ethan whispered. "Grandpa, why does he keep talking like he knows us?" "Because he did, before the farm, before the quiet years. Before I swore I'd never go back to the life that taught me how to build secret rooms beneath barn floors." Markham took another step up. "Tom," he said quietly, "we need to talk. And this time, you don't get to walk away." My gut clenched. "Ethan, outside, now." But Ethan didn't budge. He just whispered, voice thin and scared, "What did you do, Grandpa?" The question cut deeper than any blade Markham ever carried. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on me. On us. When I opened them again, Markham had reached the halfway point of the staircase. His eyes were locked on mine, and the look in them said one thing: this isn't a social call. I stepped forward, blocking Ethan fully, planting myself between my grandson and the man climbing out of the life I'd buried. "Markham," I said, voice low, "this isn't the place." "Oh, but it is." His voice softened, almost gentle. "It always was." He reached the top step. I felt Ethan suck in a sharp breath behind me, and then Markham lifted a small metal object into the lantern light. An old ID tag. One I hadn't seen in 20 years. A badge from the program. From the work we were never supposed to speak of. Ethan saw it too. His voice shook. "Grandpa, what is that?" I exhaled slowly, the truth pressing against my ribs like a trapped animal. "That," I whispered, "is the life I never wanted you to know I lived." Markham smiled faintly. "And it's time," he said, "that the boy learns everything." For a moment, the barn felt unreal, too quiet, too dim, too small for the weight of what was happening. Dust floated in slow circles through the lantern light, and each fleck carried a memory I didn't want Ethan to see. Not now, not like this. Markham stood at the top of the iron staircase, not threatening, not rushing, just there, like a shadow that finally remembered where it came from. He held the old ID tag loosely between two fingers, letting it sway in the lantern's glow. Ethan stared at it like it was some kind of relic. "Grandpa," he whispered, "why is your name on that?" "Because, in another life, it was the only name people knew me by." Markham's voice came soft, too soft. "Tell him, Tom." I shook my head. "Not your place." "No? Then whose? You hid the truth for years." He pointed the badge toward Ethan. "And the boy has every right to know what his grandfather used to be." Ethan blinked. Used to be? Used to be what?" Markham chuckled, scraping the sound against my nerves like a dull blade. "Careful, Tom. Your silence is louder than anything I could say." He took one slow step forward, not enough to cross into our space, but enough to make my breath catch. I lifted the lantern as a warning. "Markham, not another step." Ethan grabbed my sleeve again. "Grandpa, please, tell me what's going on." His voice cracked on the "please," and that broke something in me. All my life, I'd promised myself I'd be honest with the boy when he was ready. But the truth didn't respect timing. It barged in when it wanted, like Markham always did. I drew a slow breath. Ethan, before I was a farmer, before this barn, before you were born, I worked for a group called Graybridge. Markham smirked. Group? Cute way to put it. Ethan frowned. Graybridge? Like a company? I shook my head. Not exactly. More like a branch no one was supposed to talk about. We handled things the government wanted done quietly. Ethan stared at me like his whole understanding of me had cracked. You mean like spies? Markham grinned. Closer than you think, kid. Enough, I snapped. But Ethan wasn't blinking. His eyes glowed with fear and something worse, curiosity. What did you do for them? Before I could answer, Markham tilted his head. Ask him about the room under the barn. Ethan stiffened. Is that why it's there? For this Graybridge thing? I clenched my jaw. It was a safe room, storage, emergency quarters. Markham's chuckle chilled me. You're really going to sugarcoat it after all this time? Markham, stop. But he didn't. He never did. Tom, he said softly, that room wasn't a bunker. It wasn't for emergencies. He looked at Ethan. It was where they kept the files, the prototypes, and the people. My stomach twisted. Enough. Ethan's voice rose an octave. People! What people? Grandpa? Markham stepped forward again, ignoring my warning completely. His boots scraped against the barn floor, and for the first time, I saw the years on him. The lines on his face weren't just age, they were consequences. The boy deserves the truth, he said, especially after what happened the night the program shut down. Ethan's eyes darted between us. The night? What shut down? Markham slid the ID tag into his pocket and crossed his arms. You didn't tell him any of it, huh? Not the facility, not the fire, not the people who disappeared, not how you walked away right before it all came crashing down. Ethan's mouth fell open. Grandpa? What fire? I tightened my grip on the lantern, trying to steady the tremor in my hand. Markham is twisting things, like he always did. Am I? Markham's voice dropped to a whisper. Or are you scared he'll finally see who you are beneath all this hay and good behavior? Markham, I warned, this isn't your fight. Oh, but it is. His gaze sharpened. We lost everything, Tom. I lost everything. You got out clean. You built yourself a new life, a quiet one, a peaceful one. And you know what I got? He leaned forward, the lantern light carving shadows into his face. I got trapped in that place while it burned. Ethan covered his mouth with his hand. Burned? Markham's eyes narrowed at me. Tell him how you escaped. Tell him why you survived and the others didn't. I felt myself flinch. A tiny movement, but Ethan saw it. Of course he did. Grandpa, he whispered, did you leave people behind? The question hit like a blade to the ribs. But I didn't get to answer, because Markham suddenly leaned past me, his eyes dropping to Ethan's wrist, where a thin leather bracelet rested, a bracelet I'd given him on his 10th birthday, a bracelet with a symbol stamped into it, a symbol Markham recognized. His whole expression changed. Oh, he breathed, so that's why you came back. Ethan blinked. What? What are you talking about? Markham's gaze drifted up to me, slow and deliberate. You didn't tell him about that either, did you? My blood went cold. No, not that, not yet. Ethan grabbed my sleeve. Grandpa, what does he mean? Ethan, I said, voice cracking, go outside. No, he insisted, fear and frustration mixing into something sharp. I'm staying. Markham stepped even closer, his voice lowering to something that felt like a secret slipping out. The boys wearing the emblem, the same one they put on the candidates. Ethan choked out a shaky laugh. Candidates? For what? I closed my eyes. Markham answered for me. For the program Tom abandoned. And the one they wanted you for. Ethan froze. My heart lurched. That was the one truth I hoped he'd never hear. Markham smiled grimly. So tell me, Tom, how long were you planning to hide the fact that he was chosen before he was even born? For a heartbeat, I thought the barn itself might collapse from the weight of Markham's words. Ethan stood absolutely still, like his body hadn't caught up to what his ears had just heard. His fingers hovered near the leather bracelet on his wrist, the one he never took off, the one he thought was just an old keepsake from his grandfather, chosen before he was even born. I felt Ethan's eyes on me, burning through every layer of calm I'd tried to build over the years. "Grandpa," he whispered, barely audible. "What does he mean? Chosen?" My mouth opened, no sound came out. How do you explain to a 13-year-old that his entire childhood, every scrape, every smile, every good job and sleep tight, had been protected by secrets heavier than concrete, that the bracelet he wore because it made him feel brave was never just a bracelet? Markham didn't give me time to gather myself. "He doesn't remember, kid," he said, stepping one foot fully onto the barn floor. "He doesn't remember the night your mother brought you to him. The night she begged him to hide you." Ethan jerked his head toward me. "Mom?" I swallowed hard. "Markham, that's enough." He ignored me. He was always good at ignoring me. "You think Tom became a farmer because he liked the peace and quiet?" Markham went on. "No, he ran. He ran from Graybridge. He ran from the program. And he ran from the people who were looking for you." Ethan's breath caught. "Me?" "Yes, you." Markham's voice was sharp now, all softness gone. "You weren't some accident of fate. They monitored your mother before you were born, watched her genetics, watched her pregnancy. They wanted you for training before you even opened your eyes." I stepped between them, my pulse pounding hard enough to rattle the lantern glass. "That's enough, Markham," I growled. "This isn't your story to tell." Markham stared at me, his jaw tight. "Then you should have told it sooner." Ethan's voice trembled. "Grandpa, what is he talking about? Chosen for what?" I turned to him, and the look on his face nearly shattered me. Fear, confusion, betrayal, all swirling together. My words came out slow, heavy. "Ethan, Graybridge didn't just train agents, they selected kids." I paused, feeling the shame crawl through me. Children with certain abilities, certain traits. They wanted people they could mold, build. Ethan's eyes widened. "Like soldiers?" "Not soldiers," Markham said. "Weapons." I shot him a glare. "He's a child." But Ethan heard it, all of it. His voice cracked. "Am I one of them?" "No," I said quickly, too quickly. Markham scoffed. "Tom, you can barely lie to yourself. Don't insult the boy by pretending." Ethan stepped back from me, hands shaking. "Grandpa," he whispered, "is that why you brought me here? To a farm in the middle of nowhere? To hide me from—" He gestured weakly toward the dark staircase. "From that?" "No," I said, reaching for him. "Ethan, I brought you here because I love you." Markham let out a laugh, quiet, bitter. "And because you knew they'd come looking someday, didn't you, Tom?" I clenched my fists. "I left that world behind. No one was supposed to find us." Markham's eyes softened for a moment. Something almost like regret flickering through. "You think leaving changes what's in your blood? What's in his?" He nodded toward Ethan. "They don't forget their assets, Tom. And he pointed at Ethan's bracelet. "He was flagged before he took his first breath." Ethan stumbled backward like the air had been punched out of him. "So, what? I'm some kind of experiment?" "No!" I reached for him, but he stepped away. "Ethan, listen to me." "I trusted you," he whispered, tears pooling in his eyes. "You said this place was safe. You said Mom left because she was confused, not because there was something wrong with me." "There isn't," I said, voice cracking. "Ethan, there is nothing wrong with you." "Then what am I?" he snapped. "Why were they watching me? Why did Mom bring me to you? Why—" His voice broke entirely. "Why did you hide all of this?" I stood there, breathing in the heavy barn air, feeling every year of my age weigh down on my shoulders. Because he deserved the truth. Because he'd earned it. Because he was right. I knelt slowly in front of him, even though my knees screamed in protest. "Ethan," I whispered, "you're my grandson. That's what you are. Nothing else matters." He shook his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. "But what if they come for me? What if everything you said about being safe was a lie?" Markham stepped closer, stopping only when I threw a warning glare at him. Kid, safety was never part of the deal. Not for you. Not for any of us. Ethan flinched. I stood and faced Markham fully. Why are you here? I asked, my voice low and trembling. If Greybridge is gone, if everything burned, why show up now? Why come near him? Markham's expression shifted. A flicker of something, fear, urgency, crossed his features. That's the thing, Tom. He spread his hands. It didn't all burn. My heart lurched. What? Markham took a slow breath. They rebuilt the program. I froze. And they're recruiting again. Ethan looked between us, his face pale. Recruiting? Kids like me? Markham nodded slowly. Kids exactly like you. I felt something inside me break. All the years hiding. All the locks, the walls, the precautions, all the nights I stayed awake listening for footsteps that never came. And now, the storm was here. Markham's voice came soft, urgent. And they know where you are. Ethan's lips trembled. Grandpa, what do we do? I stared down into the dark opening beneath the barn, the place I swore I'd never enter again. We run? Ethan whispered. No, I said quietly. Running won't save us this time. Markham stepped forward, eyes locked on mine. You know what you have to do, Tom. I did. God help me, I did. I looked at Ethan, my grandson, my blood, and finally said the words I never wanted him to hear. We have to open the room. For a long moment, none of us moved. The cold air rising from the open floor felt like the breath of another world, one I'd kept buried for half my lifetime. Ethan stood close to me, trembling just enough that I could feel it through his jacket sleeve. Markham hovered behind us like a shadow that had finally realized it no longer belonged to the night. Grandpa, Ethan whispered, his voice fragile but brave. I'm scared. I reached out and gripped his shoulder gently. Me too, kid. Being scared just means you're human. He looked up at me, eyes reflecting the faint lantern glow. But we're opening it anyway? Yes, I said. Because the truth hurts more when it's locked away. Markham shifted his weight, the floor creaking beneath him. For the first time since he'd shown up, something in his posture softened. Maybe he realized this wasn't a mission anymore, just a family trying to breathe around old secrets. I lowered the lantern deeper into the opening. The old iron steps shimmered faintly, worn and dusty, but still solid. Somewhere far below, the shadows stretched like long fingers waiting to pull us in. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Ethan, I said, you go first. He stiffened. Me? The lock recognizes you, I explained. It won't activate unless you touch it. He hesitated, then nodded. His courage was small and shaking, but it was courage all the same. That's something the program never understood. You can't train heart. It's born, not built. Carefully, he placed one foot on the top step. It groaned under his weight. Another step. Another. I followed close behind, lantern in hand. Markham came last, muttering under his breath about hating tight spaces. Some things never change. The deeper we went, the colder it became. Not menacing cold, just the kind you find in old cellars or forgotten basements. The quiet kind, the honest kind. At the bottom of the stairs, we reached a narrow corridor. The walls were reinforced steel, faintly rusted, the ceiling low. Ethan's breath trembled in little clouds of white. It feels sad down here, he whispered. I nodded. Places remember things, just like people do. The corridor opened into a small chamber with a thick metal door at the far end. Its surface was coated in dust, except for one square panel near the handle, completely clean, like someone had wiped it with intention. A faint symbol was etched above it. Ethan's bracelet symbol. His fingers brushed the leather band around his wrist. So, this is why I have this? Yes, I said softly. To protect you. To keep you hidden. Markham stepped closer. Kid, touch the panel. It'll read your marker. Ethan's hand shook as he reached for it. Is it going to hurt? No, I said, placing my hand on his. It's just a scan. Nothing more. His palm pressed against the panel. For a second, nothing happened. Then a soft click echoed through the room. The door shuddered, then slowly swung inward. Inside, everything was still. Nothing monstrous, nothing dangerous, just a room. Plain, quiet, dusty, empty, except for a single table, a couple of metal shelves, and an old file cabinet with drawers that stuck out unevenly. Ethan blinked. "This is it!" I couldn't help but laugh a little. "You were expecting laser grids and monsters?" Kinda?" Markham exhaled sharply. "They stripped the place after the fire. Anything dangerous would have been moved." Ethan stepped farther inside, his shoulders relaxing. He touched the cold metal table and looked around with a mix of disappointment and relief. "It's not scary," he said. "No," I agreed. "It never was. Not for people like us." He turned toward me. "But you acted like there was something awful down here." I sat on one of the dusty shelves, my knees grateful for the break. "Ethan, the room itself isn't frightening. It's what it used to represent. What people like Markham and I once chose to be a part of." Markham leaned against the wall, rubbing his jaw. "We did things thinking we were doing good. Turns out we were just small gears turning a huge machine." Ethan frowned. "But that's over now, right?" "Yes," I said. Greybridge fell apart. Emberline ended. The people who ran it lost their grip. The only thing left was this room, and the fear of what it used to mean. "And me?" Ethan asked quietly. "Am I still chosen?" I shook my head. "Not anymore." I stood and walked toward him, placing both hands on his shoulders. "Ethan, you're a kid. A kid who likes drawing spacecraft and sneaking extra cookies when you think I'm not looking. You're not a weapon. You're not a project. You're not some blueprint from a program that died long before you learned to walk." His eyes filled with tears again. But these were different, softer, brighter. "You promise?" he whispered. "With everything I have." He suddenly wrapped his arms around me, burying his face in my chest. I held him close, feeling the years of fear and avoidance melt away. The room didn't feel dark anymore. It felt forgiven. Markham cleared his throat. "So, what now?" I looked around the empty chamber. "We lock it, and then we fill the floor back in. And maybe, just maybe, we let the past stay in the past." He nodded slowly. "And the people looking? They won't find anything," I said. "Greybridge is gone, Emberline is gone, and I looked at Ethan, "are done running." Markham gave a small, tired smile. "Guess that means I should stop running too." "You can stay for dinner," I said. "If you want, there's plenty." He blinked, surprised. "You're inviting me?" "It's about time someone invited you somewhere without needing something from you, isn't it?" He didn't answer, but I saw the emotion flicker in his eyes before he nodded. Back up in the barn, the air felt warmer, brighter. Ethan helped me slide the floorboards back into place. When we were done, he dusted off his hands. "Grandpa," he said, "can we sit on the porch later? Maybe talk about Mom and everything?" My chest tightened. "I'd like that." He smiled, the kind I hadn't seen since before life got heavy on him. "Good." We stepped outside together. The sky had opened into a wide stretch of orange and gold, the kind of sunset that makes you feel like the world is still full of second chances. Markham followed us into the yard, blinking at the light as if it was too bright after so many years in the dark. For a moment, everything felt right. Normal. Human. Ethan slipped his hand into mine, squeezing it gently. "Grandpa?" "Yeah, kid." "I'm glad we opened the room." I looked down at him, feeling something warm and steady settle in my chest. "Me too, Ethan, me too." And just like that, the barn, the past, the secrets, everything finally stood quiet behind us. Nothing chasing our shadows anymore. It was over, and we were finally free. The end.